Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday afternoon from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over the airwaves of Sirius XM. Mad Dog Sports Radio. The number to call up as always is 888 Mad Dog 6. That's 888-623-3646. Lots of stuff to get into today. You know, I really don't know what to say. I mean, there's so much stuff to get into. I'm really tired of talking about Colin Kaepernick. I got to admit it. I'm really tired of talking about Colin Kaepernick. I got some other stuff to talk about today. I'm going to get into that dude, Brock Turner at Stanford. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about Joe Paterno. I'll be talking about that in just a minute. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. I'm coming. But I'm going to start off the show by talking about Colin Kaepernick because he played the game last night. I really don't care about his stats. I really don't care about how he played decently last night. He scrambled out of the pocket, threw a couple of decent passes. Look, if you can't win your job over Blaine Gabbert, there's nothing to talk about. What do you want me to say? You want me to have a conversation with you about how Colin Kaepernick should be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers? Who the hell is going to be your alternative if you're Chip Kelly? Blaine Gabbert? I mean, at least Colin Kaepernick took you to the spotlight one time. I mean, when it comes to Blaine Gabbert, we don't even know if he knows how to turn on the damn lights. So I don't want to hear anything about Blaine Gabbert and how Blaine Gabbert should be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. What are we going to go to? That route where we're going to say, hey, he's such a nice guy. I mean, the guys in the locker room get along with him so well. And I mean, oh my God. I mean, this guy is just an incredibly nice guy. You can have dinner with him. You can go out to lunch with him. You can have a conversation with him. He's not aloof. He doesn't alienate anybody. I mean, my God. We've got to go with Blaine Gabbert. Is that what we're going to go to? Is that what we're going to go to when we want to talk about how we want a starting quarterback for our team? Is that the route that we're going? As if the 49ers aren't anticipated to stink enough? That's what we're going to do? If you're Colin Kaepernick and you lose your job to Blaine Gabbert from a talent perspective, then I got to look at you. And then I got to legitimately ask this question. All this noise that you've been making about the national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, and beyond, was that a ploy? Because you should be able to beat Blaine Gabbert for the starting job for the San Francisco 49ers. So from a football perspective, I don't want to hear any conversations about whether or not Colin Kaepernick should be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. The question is, who the hell else you got? Who the hell else do you have if you're the San Francisco 49ers? My God, what a mess Trent Baalke has made and Ned York has made in getting rid of Jim Harbaugh. You will rue the day, in my humble opinion. Now on to different matters. Colin Kaepernick showed up to the game in San Diego last night, collaborated with his teammate Eric Reed and others, and essentially decided to get down on one knee because they wanted to make sure that they showed respect to the military, and they didn't want the military to misconstrue their protest to be something against our armed servicemen and women who have so honorably served our nation. Has always and will always do that. Fair enough. But as we look at what transpired, as we look at the socks that Colin Kaepernick was wearing, where it had a cop with pigs on the socks, you know what that reminds us of. It reminds us of the civil rights movement. It reminds us of the Black Panthers. It reminds us of vehement protest. And if you are Colin Kaepernick, is that the message that you want to send? Perhaps it is. It's perfectly within your right to do so. But when you engage on that level to a point where you're calling cops pigs, did you not realize how that would resonate? Do you not realize the profound impact negatively that could have, not just on a few people, but on us as a society? Because if you give the imagery that cops are people we need to be against, then what imagery do you give to the cops who have to go out there and protect and serve and respond to protect and serve, especially when those 911 calls come coming? What are you going to do then when they're reluctant to do so? What do you want to do then when they're a bit apprehensive about coming to your defense? Let me put it in sports parlance for you. It's one thing to go about the business of doing your job, but when you're motivated to do it, aren't you a little bit better? I'm just saying. It's something to think about. And I don't think we've thought enough about that, which is part of our problem. We got to take these things into consideration. We got to consider what we're talking about here. And we got to pay attention to optics. How things look matter. Perception matters. And if you don't do what it takes to create the right perception, you're behind the 8 ball. I applaud Colin Kaepernick in this protest. I applaud his willingness to stand up, to be brave, and to address what he believes is right. But at the same time, you got to make sure those optics don't enter the equation. Although it occurred weeks ago. It's not like you wore the socks yesterday. You did that weeks ago. And it's something to be said about the media, because why are you portraying it as if it's something he did just now, as opposed to weeks ago before he even sat down for the national anthem? Excuse me. There's a narrative there that some would argue is trying to be portrayed falsely and erroneously against Colin Kaepernick, and that needs to be mentioned. But in the process of mentioning it, we also have to remind ourselves that Colin Kaepernick needs to be careful, particularly moving forward. And we also need to remind ourselves of what his priority needs to be. Your first order of business is winning the starting quarterback job for the San Francisco 49ers. Because I'm here to tell you something, Colin Kaepernick, wherever you are, if you're listening, I'm here to tell you. All this noise you've made, as great as it pertains to your intent it may have been, as honorable as it may have been, as productive as it may have been in creating a dialogue that needs to take place in our society today, if you lose that starting job to Blaine Gabbert, man, ain't nobody give a damn about what you got to say. Now that's unfair, and it's cruel. And it sounds so wrong, especially coming from a black man like myself. But I'm just keeping it real. If you ain't playing, you just some dude protesting. And that's not to say you should be minimized or that your truth should be ignored. It's just to acknowledge the reality that your impact will greatly dissipate because you ain't relevant as a player. You better win that starting job. That much you better do. And you better hold on to it too. Good luck. Because in the NFC West, with Arizona, with Seattle, your best shot is 3rd place. And that is obtainable so long as Jeff Fisher is coaching the Los Angeles Rams. But that's your best shot. Good luck, bro. Good luck. 888 Mad Dog 6 is always the number that call up on the show. That's 888-623-3646. That's point number 1. Point number 2. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to touch on Joe Paterno. University's approaching the 50th anniversary when he started as a coach for Penn State Nittany Lions. They want to honor this, man. And I say this. You can't do it. That's a heinous suggestion. Now, before I go on with my soliloquy, let me say that Joe Paterno is not Jerry Sandusky. He is not that disgusting, despicable lowlife who should be thrown under the jail with the sodomites, with the key thrown away, with his sorry, pathetic, soulless self. Joe Paterno is not that guy. He's not the guy that sodomized a 12 or 13-year-old. He's not the guy that was sexually molesting, raping, sodomizing little boys. He's not the dude that you throw in jail and leave for the fellas to deal with all on them by themselves. That's not Joe Paterno. That's Jerry Sandusky. And let us not confuse Jerry Sandusky and his serial pedophile self, who should be rotting in a different kind of hell. Let's not confuse that Jerry Sandusky with Joe Paterno. Joe Paterno was a great coach, a national champion, not to mention somebody who brought millions upon millions of dollars into Penn State University. But what people who support Joe Paterno, who speak to the 46 years he spent as a coach, who speak to the greatness that he brought to the program, who speak to the recognition that he brought to Penn State University, what you don't realize is that you help buffer the arguments of those who speak adamantly and emphatically against Joe Paterno. And do you know why that is? Because you speak to his power. You speak to his influence. You speak to the different changing ability that he had. And with those three ingredients thrown into the equation, one cannot ignore how negligent and derelict in his duties he was when it came to Jerry Sandusky. Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry Sandusky was the former defensive coordinator for Joe Paterno. Jerry Sandusky, according to reports, according to documents filed in court as early as 1976, Joe Paterno was made aware of Jerry Sandusky's disgusting tendencies. It happened again in 1980. And when you look at Jerry Sandusky and the fact that he ultimately was gone as coach and defensive coordinator for Joe Paterno's Nittany Lions, it still didn't stop him from keeping an office on campus. It still didn't stop him from remaining on campus. You trying to tell me that Jerry Sandusky, under the guise of helping kids with whatever programs he had in place, didn't use his connection to the Nittany Lion program in order to lure kids in? Of course he did. Of course he did. And you're Joe Paterno. And you had the power to stop it. This is the same Joe Paterno that was at his house, according to reports. And he was there when the president of the university came to his home to fire him. And do you know what they say that Joe Paterno did? They say Joe Paterno threw the president out of his house and said, damn it, I'm not going anywhere. And guess what? He didn't go anywhere. So when the Nittany Lions were struggling as a program and you were on the verge of being let go, you kicked the bosses out of your house, told them to go to hell. You ain't going anywhere, and succeeded. Hypothetical question. What would Joe Paterno have done if somebody came to him and said, Ohio State's cheating? Michigan is cheating. Michigan State is cheating. They're doing things with their program to undermine you guys when you step on the field against them. What do you think Joe Paterno would have done then? The fact that you did absolutely nothing when it came to Jerry Sandusky is criminal in and of itself. I'm quite sure we don't want to speak ill of the dead. Joe Paterno is gone. He has passed away. His statue has been removed from campus, as well as should have been. This is not an effort to speak ill of the dead, to prop up memories of Joe Paterno's dereliction of duty when it came to Jerry Sandusky. But this is acknowledgement that Penn State should not be honoring him because of it. You don't have to excoriate him. You don't have to insult him. You don't have to throw Joe Paterno's to the woods. What you need to do is let his soul rest in peace. Joe Paterno's last memory with us is that his dereliction of duty served the role of enabler. in a serial sexual molester, sodomizing children, kids. There's no way around that. There's no way around that. So should we be speaking ill of Joe Paterno? No. Should we be insulting him? No. Should we stain his memory any more than it has already been stained? No. We should let him rest in peace. But what we cannot do, what we must not do, is celebrate this man. Not now. Not ever again. My colleague extraordinaire from ESPN, Reese Davis, host of college football, Game Day, and beyond, said to viewers out there, Penn State comes across as incredibly tone deaf. You're damn right they do. We have to make sure that we pound their eardrums. And we make it so noisy, so loud that they don't think about honoring Joe Paterno. Let him rest in peace. That's about the best he deserves. 888 Mad Dog 6 is the number to call up. This 888-623-3646. Speaking of deserving, there's an individual by the name of Brock Turner that was let out of jail, served 3 months in prison. Ladies and gentlemen, he was indicted on 2 counts of rape charges, 3 sexual assault charges, felonies. He got convicted on 3 charges. I believe it was sexual assault. I know they were felonies, but 3 felony convictions. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge let him off. The judge let him off because the judge is from Stanford. Brock Turner was from Stanford. The father read an emotional note on his behalf, and the judge decides that this guy is not a danger to society. And that significant jail time, with prosecutors calling for at least 6 years, that amount of jail time would have been too cruel and undeserving for a 20-year-old Stanford student that was raping a woman. They called it digitally or something. I don't know what the hell he did, but 2 bystanders saw what he was doing to a woman who was drunk and virtually unconscious behind a garbage can. They grabbed him and held him down until the police came. He was caught. He was arrested. He was charged. He was convicted on 3 felony counts and sentenced to 3 months in prison. 3 months. Because a judge with Stanford roots thought it would be too cruel. The victim wrote a heartfelt letter about what she had been stripped of and how she had been violated. It was read on CNN, all 7,200 words of it. And then it was read on the floor of the House of the Representatives. So much so it compelled the vice president to write a personal letter to the victim. And this judge got away with letting him off. And then now there's some report that the judge has removed himself from the bench to hear criminal cases. Hell no, he should be removed, period. He should be stripped of his license to be a judge. He shouldn't be allowed to work again after a decision like that, especially for the reasons that he had the audacity, the unmitigated gall to put on a record. Why is he working? Why? This is a disgrace. Would that kind of leniency have been accorded to a black man convicted of 3 felony counts? How about a Latino? America, do you see why we're so divided? Do you see why black and white comes up? Do you see why as a nation we are what we are, how we are? Did it ever occur to folks that if more white folks were just as livid as I am, as other blacks are, as Latinos are, as other minorities are, as people of color usually are, about the flagrant injustices accorded to other groups of while such privilege is accorded to others, did it ever occur to anybody how much better we would be? This man, Brock Turner, should be behind bars right now. The federal government should get involved again right now. Civil charges, something, anything you can come up with to get his sorry behind back in jail. 3 months? I mean, if you said to me 2 years instead of 6 years, all right, leniency, that happens. But 3 months? 3 months. He ain't even had time to get seen by the fellas. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. This is the disgrace that America can be sometimes. This is what the Colin Kaepernicks of the world allude to. This is the kind of stuff that needs to be addressed. You know, when OJ got the Heisman Trophy, I think he got the Heisman Trophy removed from USC, and USC doesn't want a relationship with him. You know, he was acquitted. And you still had a lot of black folks in an uproar saying his behind deserved to be under the jail. I was one of them. Somehow I don't hear that much noise about Brock Turner. I know murder's different. Double murder. I know that. I understand that. But tell that to the victim that wrote that 7,200-word piece read on CNN. Listen to her words. Hear what she had to say about Brock Turner. And then you explain to me, how can Brock Turner be free today? And how could a judge still be allowed to be adjudged instead of being judged for his flagrant transgressions and his negligence of duty? I'll give y'all a moment. Maybe y'all can explain that to me. 888-MAD-DOG-6 is always the number to call up. That's 888-623-3646. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, Sirius XM.